Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Schweppe, and I'm a co-creative relationship coach who supports therapists, coaches, and other healing professionals to create the love and life that they most want. I'm supporting people who are feeling kind of stuck. Their life probably isn't that bad, but maybe they're feeling frustrated in their relationship. It's just not the kind of relationship that they wanted. Maybe things have gotten a little dull, or maybe there is some ongoing conflict that just never seems to resolve. And maybe your work is good, but it's just not great, and you're feeling drained at the end of the day. And you're helping people and you love helping people, but there might be a part of you that feels a little bit like a fraud because you go home and your relationship, it's not the best. And maybe your work, you're not enjoying it as much as you could. And yet you're helping people in their relationships, their relationship with themselves and others and their work. And so you've probably tried a lot of the things. You've done the therapy, you've done the coaching, you've probably done body work, you've probably done some trauma work, and yet things just aren't really changing. So I am here to support you because I have been that person. I came into this work, which I'll talk about in a minute, because I found myself 3 months outside of a divorce. And I had been in and out of therapy for 15 years, and I, always worked, and my life was great. I mean, in many ways, but it just wasn't what I wanted. I spent a long time feeling sort of anxious and overworked, and I was really good at what I did, but I didn't love it, and I didn't feel recharged most of the time. And eventually, when I was married, I had a great relationship, and things fell apart, and we tried couples counseling, and I, did EMDR, and I did my own therapy, and I had a coach. I did all these things, and yet we still couldn't make it work. And so I was baffled because I had done so much. I'd done spiritual work and ego work, and I was reading all the books and couldn't make it work. And so 3 months before I was divorced, I bought this book called Conscious Loving by Gay and Katie Hendricks. I had read a Gay Hendricks book before this called The Big Leap, which was great. I loved his work. I came back into his work, Conscious Loving. I don't know how I found that book. It has sort of this divine quality to it. I've met other people who have had the same experience. Like, it just kind of comes into their lives. And there was a very distinct before and after when I read that book. When I bought it, I was not yet divorced. And I just had this idea that I had worked too hard in the marriage, and I was sick of trying, and I didn't read the book. 3 months after I was divorced, I started to really get curious, what happened? Why couldn't I make that work? It had all this inner work, and yet I was still stuck. And I didn't want to replay the same patterns. And so I picked up that book, Conscious Loving, and I think I probably read it in a few days because I was just so hooked immediately. And it's an older book, but it really spoke to me because I saw, this is what happened. This was the missing piece for me in my relationship, and all of my relationships really up until that point. It was a total game changer. And I'll get into that down the line. I was so intrigued, and I was looking for something professionally. At that point, I was doing coaching work, mind body work. I wasn't actually working with the body though, but I was working with women who had physical pain. And so I just got this big missing piece. And so I went to go look. I wanted to work with the Hendricks. I didn't know at this point, if they were still coaching one-on-one with people. And I reached out to them on Instagram. I didn't hear anything. Went to their website. They have trained many coaches in their modality and their methods. And I found a psychologist out in Colorado, Dr. Julie Colwell. I was immediately drawn to her. I don't know why. I was pretty synchronistic. And I went to her page and I started looking at some of her work. She had some things that really grabbed me. She had a training program for practitioners. I'm also a social worker by training. My background, I was trained to be a therapist. I worked in the healthcare field for a long time. And so she had a training program for practitioners in her modality. And she had listed some books like Bruce Lipton and David Hawkins, some of the Hendricks books. I'm like, who is this woman? And at that point, I had discovered David Hawkins' work. I was really intrigued by it. And so then I went and bought her books, which I would highly recommend. One of them is called The Relationship Bride. She has a relationship skills workbook. Bought those books. I think I read The Relationship Bride in probably a few days again. It was another kind of before and after. Julie worked with the Hendricks, so she's built on a lot of their work, developed some of her own tools, and it was even more of a deepening of seeing into my part in the marriage. And I had been in just from my own history. I've been in Al-Anon for many years prior to even meeting my ex-husband. So I knew a lot about like sort of taking responsibility for myself and had learned all these 12-step tools. And yet this was a different level of taking responsibility. This was a different level of relationship and how my unconscious was playing out. It turns out that many of the things that I complained about, I actually required. That's a pretty in-depth topic that I would love to get into at some point, and I hope you check out that video. What it did was it put me back in my own driver's seat, seeing myself as the creator of my experience. I was no longer, at least intellectually at that point, I understood, at the whim of other people, because my external world was a reflection of what was going on inside. And so this work became about learning how to go into the body, becoming more embodied with these tools, and shifting my emotional state so that I could feel the way I wanted to feel and create the things in my life that I wanted to create. So I began working with Julia and training with her as a practitioner. That was in 2020. I haven't stopped. I now work with the Evolutionary Power Institute. I'm the assistant director. I have so much fun in this community. It's been so life-changing for me. I've actually met my now partner. We connected last year. I have this experience now. We both have these tools that we're using. It's not that I didn't bring along all the same stuff that I had in my previous marriage and my other relationships. Of course, I'm still bringing myself to the table. It's just that we now have tools to move through the places that we get stuck. And instead of getting stuck in reactive brain, those places where it just doesn't feel good, we get further and further apart from each other, which I think is like what was the ultimate demise of my former marriage. We have tools to move through those places that we inevitably get stuck. And so the shift has been really seeing these places in my relationship now, my relationship with myself, with my partner, with my work, pretty much everywhere that I'm in relationship with my body, that those places of stuckness, those triggers are actually my teachers. It's now become a doorway to the stuck emotional energy in my body that keeps me from living the life that I really want. It's kind of like a sign now that says, go here, right? Those are the places that before I just wanted to run from. I wanted to blame other people. So now I have these tools to be able to go into those really tough places that I spent a long time in therapy talking about, sorting out, intellectualizing, understanding them. Like I knew in many ways why I operated, and yet I was still stuck. And that's because the missing piece for me was working with my body, working with the energy of emotion. I think I did a lot of body work because at one point I developed a hip injury. I was a runner and was really stuck professionally, and I was married at the time, and I developed a hip injury. I was like trying to get my attention. So I ended up connecting with a lot of body workers, chiropractors. I hired a personal trainer, did all these things working with my body. I still stayed stuck because I didn't have the tools to go in and work with the energy of my emotion in my body. Turns out that was the missing piece for me. So I've got this whole new frame of how I see how we experience ourselves, how we experience our emotions, what happens in relationship, that it's totally changed my life. And I am so excited to share these tools with you all because it wasn't something that I learned. I didn't learn it in some of the coaching work that I did. I didn't learn it in the therapy work. I definitely didn't learn it in grad school. And not to knock any of those things because they're certainly supportive and I got a lot out of it. But for me, I needed to know step-by-step ways to go in to the places that I was stuck and clear that dense, stuck, negative emotional energy through my body so that I could access more of my creative brain, my essence, to discover what it was that I really wanted in my life and in my relationship, and to spend more time in flow and to have fun. I have heard my mentor say that she's a recovering serious person, and I love that because I'm such a recovering serious person. And even in the work that I would do, it was like, oh, I got to do the work, right? Like I was reading spiritual books, and I was doing spiritual work, and I was doing this ego work, and I was like, it was work, and it was tough, and it was hard. I kind of had this idea that I had to suffer, that I had to go through this dark night of the soul, that I had to be in this tough place, which maybe that's true. I'm sure that's part of what led me here. But now when I get stuck in those places, it doesn't have to be such a grind, right? It turns out I can actually have fun when I'm stuck in those places. I can bring all of me to the table, right? The parts of me that I've hidden from partners, from the world, even from myself. I now have tools to go in and work with my unconscious patterns that feels loving and inviting, and it's radical the way it shifts things for me. So I'm super excited to be here. I don't know what happened recently. I just talking and sharing, and I feel so passionate about like getting this stuff out to the world, because it's like I didn't know what I didn't know. And so with information and education and support, my life changed. And so I'm here to support you all to step into a new paradigm and supporting you to create the life that you really want. So I kept getting cut off on TikTok. TikTok now is like a 10-minute mark. And I'm like, I'm just going on and loving it and talking about all these tools. And it just dawned on me that maybe I should start a YouTube channel. That's where I'm watching a lot of the videos that I'm interested in. I can teach concepts more at length and hopefully build a community that you all find super supportive and helpful. I know that when I came into this work, before I started working with Julie, I found a lot of her videos online, and I was like just sort of gobbling them up. And I so appreciate that there was that information available to me as I had just stumbled across this information and really wanted to dive in. And I think that especially for us, therapists, coaches, and healers who are working with other people, I'm excited about the potential ripple effect of, you being able to learn these tools, being able to embody them, and then share them with other folks that you're working with. And on that note, one of the things that I want to say, so my training was in mental health. I got my master's in social work. I think I finished school. In 2009, I finished school. I had every intention of going into the therapy field. And then life happened. I had a lot of stuff going on at the time. I had a family member who was just out of like a pretty lengthy stay in rehab. I was out of town for school, came back home. I had a breakup. I was with somebody for on and off for 15 years at the time. So life was like happening. And I remember feeling so overwhelmed at the idea of supporting others. Like I just needed to get my own footing. So I ended up in medical social work. I worked in hospitals and clinics for a pretty long time. And a piece of me was always missing. Like I knew from the time I was a teenager that I wanted to be in a helping role in that way. And so one of the really cool things, I got into coaching back in 2018. I did a health coaching program. So I was like slowly getting my way back into working one-on-one with clients. And that was great. It was fun. I felt pretty exhausted. I always felt exhausted. I felt exhausted in the medical field. I felt exhausted coaching. And I had this, I was torn because I loved this work and I loved the one-on-one, but I felt tired and I didn't like how it drained me. When I found this work that I'm now doing, when I found the Evolutionary Power Institute, started doing trainings, what I found was that there's this magical thing that happens when I learned how to tune in, actually be in my body. And the funny thing is, I didn't even know that I wasn't in my body. I had done trauma work. I had done EMDR. I had done all kinds of stuff. So it was like, I didn't realize I wasn't totally in my body, and that was the thing that was creating a lot of exhaustion. I was so in my head trying to stay one step ahead of the client. I needed to know what was going to happen, and I needed to know in my social work a diagnostic frame in my mind. And I felt so much responsibility, which of course there is responsibility there. And of course I am guiding clients, but the way in which I was doing it was so heady and mental. That's what was draining me, because I wasn't connected to my body. I wasn't totally in the flow of the experience. And so what I've learned now, being an evolutionary power practitioner, is that this work is so fun. It's actually enlivening. That now when I finish sessions, I feel so great, because as I'm with clients and they're surfing the waves of their own energetic expression and experience, I'm also in my body with them. And one of the things that's so fun is I'll get these intuitive hits, and I'm kind of with them in this new way. And I think that as I'm supporting them to come into their bodies and I'm in my body, it's like an instant recharge of my batteries. It's so great. I mean, I watch clients' faces at the end of our sessions, and often look brighter. They will say they have more energy, because what I'm doing, and I'll get into this down the line in my videos, is I'm supporting clients to shift out of reactive brain, being below the line, being in their egos, sort of being stuck in the mind, helping them to shift out of the dense negative energy that's in their body so that they can be in creative brain, their essence, their truest self. And it's from there that they're in a rest and digest mode, that they know that their source, we are connected to the oneness of all that is, and they feel recharged because it feels really good to be in creative brain. And so that was a turning point for me, to even like the possibility that I could feel really good doing work that I absolutely love, that I could feel really good in my romantic relationship, that I could actually show up as I am, that I didn't have to like always be helping, that I didn't have to, not say the things that might hurt someone else, that I discovered tools to show up, to be in integrity, to be able to speak my truth. And it turns out that having very practical ways to do this was a total game changer. And it's humbling for me because I was always doing trainings professionally and personally. Like, I never stopped learning. I was always doing this inner work, and I missed these very key things. I had no idea. And so I'm feeling really excited to be here with you. And I hope that you feel welcomed and that you feel that you can bring your whole self to this community, that you can share where you're stuck without the fear of, looking like a fraud or being worried that people are going to judge you. What I want is for you to be able to show up and let me know where you're stuck so that I can support you, because I know what that's like. I know the feeling of, quite frankly, I felt shame. I felt so much shame that things weren't working and that I'd done all these trainings, and here I am, this helping professional, and I didn't know what to do. So I invite you to join me here, to subscribe, to follow along, to comment, to let me know where you're stuck, to bring your whole self, and to begin to wonder what might be possible for you with this new way of being. And I hope to offer you really, really supportive videos and information that will help you to begin to shift your life so that you can step into a life that you are absolutely in love with. All right, guys, I'd love to hear from you. I look forward to creating more videos and to interacting with you in the future.